This week in the conversation, I have the honor to receive British Canadian author Lucien Telford. He's joining me from the Vancouver area. We're going to be talking about his impressive, fantastic novel titled Sequence. Interesting, intriguing title, wonderful story. But before we get into this interesting interview, I just want to remind everyone about my own um, novel published back in September, titled Bittersweet Memories of Last Spring. And if you haven't, if you have not gotten a copy, I think now it's the time for you to get one. And if you have, you can always get one for your friend also. The best way to support my literary effort is to do so. And also, I'm encouraging you to continue to support our wonderful literary show, The Conversation. The best way to do so also is to subscribe to it. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it's going to you as soon as possible. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma. It's an honor this evening to receive impeccable author, award-winning author, Lucien Telford. He's joining me from Canada, and we're going to be talking about his fantastic novel titled The Sequence.
Thank you, Ardain.
Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the honor.
Okay. Now, would you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Lucien Telford?
I'd like to say that I've lived the lives of at least three men. As we were just talking pre-show, I was born in the UK, moved to Ontario, Canada, when I was 8, and grew up there, went to school there, and became an aviator there, and then moved out here to the West Coast. And cut my teeth flying small airplanes for about 5 years, and then moved to Hong Kong in 2000 to fly heavy jets. Flew the 747 there,
Right.
the 777, flew all over the world, worked for them for 14 years, and then came back here to Canada. I came back to Canada in 2007, but continued to work for the same company. Lived in Vancouver, and now work for a charter company. We fly 737s down to holiday destinations, to the Caribbean, to Mexico, and I now live in Whistler in the mountains with my wife Katie, and she's 6 months pregnant.
Wow. You see, you live in the mountains, because I remember last time I spoke to a Canadian writer. He lives in Vancouver, not Vancouver.
Whistler?
No, it's one of the main cities of Canada.
Calgary.
Calgary, yeah. It is in Calgary.
Yeah.
And he was telling me the same thing. He sent me pictures of him on the banks of some beautiful rivers,
Yeah.
The lush green mountains behind him. Is that the kind of lifestyle you live too, Lucien?
I don't.
No?
I mean, I lived in Calgary. I went to college in Calgary. At Mount Royal University, and Calgary's about an hour drive from the mountains, and quite dry. I'm surprised he sent you pictures with lush green trees. Out here, I mean, we really are in the mountains. I wish I had a window to show you, but I'm in a
That's okay.
crawl.
That's okay.
I'm in my crawl space. But no, I live at the foot of the mountain. I can ski to my front door.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I have to take a 5-minute bus, but it's free to get to the lifts to get up. Yeah, we live an outdoor lifestyle. We live about a 5-minute walk from a lake called Lost Lake. We have lots of bears. We have lots of cougars. We have bears come to the front door in the summer, sniffing around my barbecue. Yeah, black bears.
Bears?
Yeah. I mean, we live in their house. We live in the bears territory, right? There are a lot of bears here. So
You talking about the Canadian grizzly? Not
We
the
don't have a
ferocious one.
we don't know. Yeah, the grizzlies can be scary. We have black bears. They're more like I wouldn't want to face one off. You can shoo them away depending on their size, but uh, yeah, no, we don't have a lot of grizzlies here. Grizzlies are further south and further
Ferocious.
north.
Mm.
Yeah.
We have bears in Florida too, but usually I've never seen a big, giant one.
What kind of bears do you have in Florida?
Black bears, we have them in Central
Same as ours.
Florida
Okay.
around the, the city of Orlando and
Hmm.
Sanford area.
Okay.
We also have them too in Northeast Florida, where I live. I
Okay.
live in the community which used to be a forest, and they developed the community.
Ah, nice.
And I've never seen it, but I've resident telling me they saw cubs around the gym. Well,
Uh,
okay, so
you know what they say? If you see cubs, run. because because mom is not far around. They're
exactly,
not far away, right? She is,
exactly.
and you don't want
So
to be
the
between them and a cub.
sequence we're going to be
Mm,
talking about
mm.
interesting, intriguing, also title. And you could see the three storylines and it, but apparently it's one protagonist.
Yes. Well, you could argue Kit becomes a protagonist, but she's a quiet one. Have you read it all the way through?
Not yet,
Okay.
but but I don't want you to tell the whole plot also. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, yeah, I mean, really, it's a hero's journey,
Mhm.
and it follows. Obviously, Dallas Ward is the main protagonist, and he's an aviator
Right.
who's sort of fallen on ill times, but that's backstory. And now he is hauling contraband for a Hong Kong triad,
Right.
which is organized crime syndicate,
Hmm.
um, in a mob-owned stealth jet that flies in ground effect, so it
Hmm.
flies low level and it's very difficult to detect. Which sounds a little futuristic, but really not far from what we're capable of today.
As you mentioned.
Um, we have Kit McKee, who is the world-leading genetic engineer, and she's been run out of an America that no longer wants genetic editors, and that is also backstory,
Uh-huh.
which I allude to in the book. And she's working in northern China where she's allowed to do genetic editing.
Hmm.
And she's doing vanity edits on the human genome, the human sequence,
Hmm.
and but she's also working on a side project that she thought she was keeping secret, but turns out she isn't. And a pair of Hong Kong police detectives who are investigating a series of murders,
Hmm.
who whose victims turn up during typhoons, which are very chaotic if you've ever been through one or a hurricane. And those bodies turn out to be genetically edited, which leads them to Kit McKee, who has recently gone missing.
And that's and the story develops from here.
The
We're
story
gonna
develops from there.
we simply just stop right here.
Yeah,
Tell the
that's
whole
enough.
plot. But
That's
let me go
enough
back to
background.
Dallas Ward now.
Okay.
So so how did you feel when you were writing these lines? Because you are a pilot yourself.
Correct. Um, I I tried not to delve too much into the aviation aspect because I didn't want it to be a boring book about a pilot
Now
written by a pilot.
you're gonna have to explain that to us also. Why being talking about adventurous type of action from the air as a pilot from
Mm.
your own experiences, professional experience as a pilot would be so boring. Why
It
would it?
would be. Or why would it be boring? Well, because flying airliners, and you can imagine as a passenger and as a pilot, we would prefer every flight to be the most boring flight you could possibly imagine. It's not the case. They are not always boring, but certainly not as exciting as flying 30 feet off the ocean in a stealth machine, avoiding people trying to shoot at you. So,
Exactly.
um, yeah. So I mean, obviously I have almost 30 years of aviation experience behind me. more than 20 years flying Boeing airliners. That story is boring. But from that, from my experiences, as an early aviator, where things were a little more dangerous, you could say, I guess, I tried to create an exciting um, aspect of something I know a lot about. And truly, like, I'm a Formula One fan as well. I don't know if you follow racing, but a lot of what they go through, I try to bring that to Dallas's flying experience, which is very low, very
Right.
fast.
Mhm.
And while they don't shoot at each other in Formula One, they are in combat to some degree, and they are experiencing high G loads. So I tried to bring some of that, and from some interviews with like Lewis Hamilton, who's my favorite
Mhm.
driver, and I tried to bring some of that into the sequences, the flying sequences down low in the book to try and bring it some excitement.
Your work of fiction is truly a very intriguing and fascinating one,
Thank you.
because precisely when you're talking about, because my son, he's very, very, very fascinated about, genetic editing.
Mm,
He's an engineer in system information. So he's very fascinated about these things.
mm.
And he wants me to pass to get let him read the book as soon as I'm done with it. And I said, no, you
Okay.
have to have your own copy. So
Yeah, thank you.
I never
I
share my
appreciate
copies
that. I appreciate that.
with readers. Uh,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's so interesting, but yet you find a way to get three-dimensional type of stories, and you sort of just channel them together into one to
Mm.
create a perfect work. So, how did you come up with the idea? Because I know every writer, before you even start, you sit down and start writing,
Mm.
there's a plan, there's an architectural plan. So, how did you do that?
Um, well, I wrote it over a period of about 4 years because and that was I was taking creative writing classes, but I had an idea, and I had an idea about a pilot who was hauling contraband for a triad, for a Hong Kong triad. And I know something about Hong Kong, having lived there for so
Oh,
long and continued to travel there for so many years. And so it grew through classwork, um, to become what was he hauling?
mhm,
And obviously we're in the future, and I started to research genetic editing. We're gonna say like 6 years ago.
mhm,
I was fascinated with CRISPR and what CRISPR stands for.
mhm.
If you don't know, do you know?
No, 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 not
It's
really.
it's a genetic scissor. It exists today. It stands for clustered, regularly interspersed palindromic repeats.
Okay.
And it is a method discovered by Jennifer Doudna, whose last name I stole for one of my characters in the book. um, on purpose, on purpose. So far,
Okay.
my father is the only person to have picked that out, which is impressive. But she, so she developed this genetic scissor, which allows us to change the genetic code of any living thing.
Right.
It's in use today. The the problem today is the off-target and on-target ratio. So an on-target means I'm going to solve muscular dystrophy as an example,
Okay.
which is a genetic disease, I think,
Okay.
right? So by changing this genetic sequence,
Mhm.
we or they can perhaps cure it. But what are the off targets? What happens as a result? But
Mhm.
we don't know. We don't
Mhm.
have the mechanism just yet to see where that goes. So the as I did more reading, and it is an endless pit of reading. I cannot even imagine what it would be like to be a genetic engineer. Um, uh, I came to what germline edits are. And do you know what a germline edit is?
No, no,
Your,
no.
your son will know.
Yeah, I'm sure
It,
he
it
does. But
it
he
is
knows so many things that I don't,
I'm sure. So a germline edit is it's an ethical minefield, and very, very curious for me. And it is where we make one of these edits. At the moment, I think we need to do it in an embryo, but it becomes part of their permanent genetic code, meaning it will be passed on to um, that person's offspring.
Okay.
And when we think about that, uh, and when I think about what is possible and what will be possible in 100 years, and we can think of something as small as eye color, but if we could think of something as big as strength or intelligence, and we could change that in a group of people. It could be racial, it could be
Let me ask you something.
political.
Before you get to that, let me ask you
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Do you seriously think that human can be genetically modified?
it's happening today.
It is.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening
This is
particularly
pretty scary,
successfully, but it is coming. And what fascinated me was that there was no ethical
Yeah,
board. There's almost no control. I think it's coming now,
really?
but there's very little ethical control over what is the pace at which genetics is accelerating is terrifying. And every time I sit down on my computer on a weekly basis and do a little more research, there's more and more. It's gone further and further along. So
But the
uh,
scientific community, they say it's good for medical research.
correct,
It
but
will lead to more cure for very complicated diseases.
correct,
There's also, I would say, the human side of it. I mean,
there is also and I make this akin to, like, nuclear weapons. We have nuclear power now
uh-huh.
as a result of the same research that was going into nuclear
Yeah,
weapons.
exactly.
And
You have a point.
I feel that this is no different,
Hmm.
and it's terrifying. So, on that note, the you asked me about the book. So I wrote about 60,000 words of this story
Hmm.
with these two characters,
Hmm.
and I got to the end and I was like, it's not enough.
Hmm.
A science fiction novel needs sort of 80,000 words
I know
and
the
up.
feeling.
So I brought in these two detectives, Fong and Wu, and by and large, they have been the people that everyone loves the most. They have a lot of character, and everybody loves detective novels. Well, not
Uh-huh.
everybody, but a lot of people like detective novels. And these two, they live and breathe Hong Kong, and as a result of having spent enough time, I'd say, in Hong Kong, I really feel like that comes out in their characters,
Hmm.
and so they have some legitimacy that maybe I wouldn't have been able to bring to their characters had I not lived
And Hong
in
Kong.
in Hong Kong for so long. Yeah,
Mhm. And of course,
yeah,
it says that, we as novelists, so we pen stories based on our own personal experiences because fiction reflects reality. So
correct.
that's
Hmm,
what it was.
hmm.
So that's for you to get that experience from Hong Kong. But let me ask you something now. While you were living in Hong Kong, did you find like a Canadian community there in Hong Kong too?
Yeah, although initially it was the expat community.
Oh.
I moved there as by myself.
Mhm.
I didn't know anyone. Um, that's not true. I knew one person sort of. And so but we joined as a class. I think there might have been 10 or 12 of us in a class. And we started in Australia. We had to do a month in Australia of training to change our licenses from all of the different countries we came from.
Mhm.
So we Canada and the US and Australia, um, Zimbabwe.
Okay.
So we had people from all over the world in our class, and we
Mhm.
so we had to transfer our licenses to Hong Kong licenses, which required some study,
Mhm.
and that took about a month. So we got to know each other in that month, and then we moved to Hong Kong, and
Mhm.
and there is quite a large expat community in Hong Kong. At least when I left, it was about 1 million of the 7 or so million people that were there then
Really?
were expats.
Wow.
So it's a large expat community. In addition, um, there's 6 million Hong Kong Chinese
Right.
there.
Right.
And I played hockey. I play hockey. I'm a goalie. So
Okay.
I joined a league there, and obviously there's quite a few Canadians in the league, and a lot of
Really? Okay.
yeah, and a lot of locals in the league. So my my community was quite wide.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, did I find a Canadian community? Yes. Did I always hang out with the Canadians?
Not really.
Not by choice, not because they were Canadian, not because they were Canadian, but because because we were friends. And
Friends.
whether that connection came from hockey or from flying or
Mm.
from our country of origin,
Right.
there was always a reason, or just awesome people.
But let me ask you something. Let's get back to your writing again,
Mm.
Lucien. Um, Writing fantasy is it's a question I always ask my fantasy writers friends. Um, what is the most difficult stage in writing fantasy?
And I mean, I don't write fantasy, but I write within the science fiction and fantasy
Well,
realm.
exactly. No, the different
Yeah.
type of fantasy. I mean, the type of fantasy stories that you write.
Um, well, I think paring down all of the crazy ideas that roll through here on a regular basis into one cohesive story that is worth
Right,
being told.
right.
I mean, in addition, I'm writing the sequel right now. I have 120,000 words done, and I'm in the process of completing the first draft and linking up all of those ideas that I've got into what
Hmm.
ends up being a well-woven story.
Hmm.
Um, I'm having some trouble with that at the moment. I don't write linearly. I wish I did. I think it would be a lot easier for me to write linearly,
Is it
but I
because
write.
of your professional navigation or something? Because
Well, I don't wake up in the morning at 9 o'clock and say, I gotta sit down and write for 8 hours. I wish I could.
right.
But I do have a job. And that does take me away. And it's shift work. So sometimes, I walk in the door here at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And it does take a couple of days to come back from that. And then maybe I'm at the door again. Uh, but I don't find like I have a 4 book series, more or less complete in my head.
Mm.
Um, but putting that together um, in such a way that intrigues me,
Mm.
I find a challenge. Yeah, because I don't, I wanted to read a book like this one,
Hmm.
and looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find one, and so I wrote it, and so I'm trying to stay in that hole. I want to stay. I want to continue to write in in a a vacancy in the market. Um, that's my goal. So staying on top of that and truly doing research on a field such as genetics that I know nothing about except what I've read on the internet. Um,
Now
and
you're a genius yourself, you know. Because you write it and it's so compelling enough to attract the attention of readers, and not any
yeah,
reader, you know. So that means you did a great job. That's my next question. Now, other writers told me the same thing too. When you written a wonderful book, whether people are waiting for a sequel or just waiting for the next book, the pressure tends to be higher because you have to
I
live to expectation. Is that how you're
absolutely
feeling right now?
100%. I've set myself a deadline of January 31st to finish this first draft.
Right.
And sometimes, my wife is a wonderful, beautiful person. The dedication in this book is
Mhm.
that she gave me the space
To do it.
to write a book
Okay.
and to come out the other side with to go into this world
Mhm.
and come out the other side with a novel. And now she's like I said, 6 months pregnant,
Okay.
and my role has become greater.
Is she your first beta reader?
She doesn't read sci-fi, so no.
Mm.
Believe it or not, my mom. My
Okay.
mom is my beta reader, and she's a ferocious reader and pulls no
Okay, that's
punches.
great.
She pulls no punches. So when she beta read the sequence, and she sent me
Okay.
a message once that says, "I have 3 words for you," and I
Okay.
won't tell you what they were, but it was the name of an author and one character, and I had written a character very similar to that character, and I was like,
Okay.
"Oh, she's completely right." So I had to rewrite that character.
That's fantastic when you have a mom who's so,
Uh,
laser focused,
Laser, yeah,
who leaves nothing to fly,
yeah, right. She's yeah. At no point is she my mother when she's beta reading. She is my beta reader and not my mother.
Exactly. That's what it should be,
Mm.
by the way.
I agree. I agree. I agree.
Because
And
your
I
friends, your relatives, they always love you, and they will always give you those little white lies. Everything is going to
right,
be perfect. You know,
right.
and
Yeah,
sometimes you have to leave this aside, and you take your, reader's hat and read it.
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly, objectively.
Yeah.
So we've been talking for almost an hour, but something
Wow.
I always
Yeah,
do,
it goes like
Lucien,
that.
when I have a friend, an author, and the conversation,
Okay.
we stop talking about literature for a moment, and then we're human. So yeah, I know you live in Canada, you live in the mountains, and Canadian cuisine is very something I like, by the way. I used to travel with my family almost every other year to Toronto and also to Quebec. So I love traveling. I've never been to Western Canada, by the way.
Oh, you must come.
So is there
And
a difference in terms of the cuisines between Eastern Canada and Western, or where you are right now?
I feel like Canada is such a melting pot of so many different cultures.
Cultures.
And obviously we have a large Asian presence on the West
Oh,
Coast,
West Coast.
in Vancouver at least. Largely, I think due to proximity and the fact that
Right.
having spent so much time in Hong Kong, geographically it's very similar. The
Mm-hmm.
mountains and the water and the city
Mm-hmm.
where it is. So we do have a lot of Asian cuisine. I love sushi.
You do?
Um, and our we Vancouver is this microcosm of the best sushi at the best price on the
Really?
planet. Yeah, and I've had sushi all over the planet many, many times in Japan. And it is the cheapest, it is the best. And
Nothing
there's
matches that.
there's no better sushi I've had than in
Okay.
well, I mean maybe in Tokyo I've had some very good sushi, but it was very expensive. And for slightly less money, you can have very good sushi, and or a lot less money and slightly less quality, very good sushi in
Mhm.
Vancouver. So I don't what constitutes Canadian cuisine?
It might be maybe pretty much standard American cuisine, I
Poutine,
would say.
poutine.
Maybe Midwestern. They say most
Midwestern
Canadian things.
hamburgers and French fries. I um yeah, I don't honestly we just have because we're a port city, we're West Coast, we have access to all we have a lot of locals, right? We have a lot
Mm,
of Asian
mm,
local
mm,
people living in the West Coast, right? And I mean, like Filipinos, Japanese, Koreans,
mm.
Hong Kong Chinese, mainland Chinese. We really have it all right here, and cooked by locals.
Okay.
So, is it different on the West Coast? Asian, I would say.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you something here now. What about in the house? So house, so what is the typical? Because I here in my house, because I know we have the typical Caribbean cuisines that we all have.
Lucky. You're so lucky. I love Caribbean cuisine.
You do.
Um, yeah, well, I mean, my wife's quite picky. So there's some limits. We eat out a lot. I cook real basic, simple stuff that my mom taught me when I was, going to college. So I'll make a stir fry. I'll make
Really?
spaghetti bolognese.
Okay.
Just chicken and vegetables, stuff on the barbecue. Steak, some asparagus. Our cuisine is not. It's not. It's not
I
fancy
know.
in this house. It's not
I
fancy.
hear you. But let's switch
Try to eat healthy.
something. Let's switch something different. Huh? How about music? I know Canadian music isn't too different from American rock. Like folk music too could be just the same as American.
Yeah, well, I have a pair of guitars sitting right
That's
there.
what I was going to ask you.
I could point the camera over there. I don't think it's pretty messy over there, but there's
I see it right there. Yeah.
a pair of acoustic guitars, a microphone that I'm in the middle of setting up. Yeah, my wife plays the banjo. I have
He
another,
does. Okay.
yeah, I have another four guitars hiding in the next room. My dad is an accomplished guitar player. He's I kicked him out of the house because it's a very small house for this interview. But they'll be back shortly. They're visiting from Ontario.
Okay.
So yeah, I play a lot of like Tragically Hip and the stuff I grew up with, like 90s music.
Okay.
Pearl Jam
Mm.
and yeah, that sort of thing. I mean, do you know the Tragically Hip?
No.
They are a mainstay of Canadiana. And
Okay.
they're from Kingston.
Oh,
Their
from
lead singer
Kingston.
passed away about 5 years ago, unfortunately.
Mm.
But yeah, that's sort of what goes on here. We listen to um, some old classics.
Mm.
Um, and I'm gapping on names right now, caught
Uh-huh.
on the spot. But we listen to a wide variation here, and sometimes we've got the house music going.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
little dance, little groove going on. Yeah,
Okay. You just like
depends
me,
on
you
the
know.
time of night and how much rum we've had to drink, how much Caribbean rum.
The margarita also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
Now,
usually go
how
ahead.
about let's go back to literature, Lucien.
Mm.
Who is your favorite author of all time?
Um, by a very, very long margin, William Gibson.
Oh,
He's a Canadian American author. He actually lives here in Vancouver.
okay.
Um, and if my cable will reach,
Mm,
I'll just grab a book here, agency that he signed. So,
okay.
William Gibson, can you see him?
Yeah, William Gibson. Yeah,
William Gibson. He just did a TV show called The Peripheral.
really.
Well, he didn't, but you see, he signed this to Lucien.
Ah, wow, 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 wow. Truly
So
see.
I
Mm,
met my favorite author of all time. And he created a genre. He created cyberpunk. In the 80s, he wrote about the internet, called it the Matrix, which you may have heard of.
mhm,
Um, he was very prescient, or is a very prescient writer.
mhm,
And I am in no way comparing myself to his capability. He won the Hugo and the Nebula Award
mhm.
in the same year, and I think he's the only person that's ever done that with his
Wow,
debut novel, Neuromancer.
wow.
Um, but I do mimic to
Mhm,
some degree his say style, but I try to put as much depth into each
mhm,
sentence as he does. I try to write like he would,
mhm.
perhaps, let's say.
But you know
So
what?
yeah.
That's nothing because as writers, we also are avid readers,
Mm.
so we also want to be unique too. I know sometimes there's some words in a particular sentence that you would want to, but here he's already used it. So
Yeah, it's correct. Exactly. No, I mean, I obviously, I feel like as though I've found my voice, and I mean, I write more than just this novel and the one I'm working on. I take part in a contest called NYC Midnight,
okay.
and that's short form. It's a short format. They give you a a word you have to use, a genre, and an action, and give you 24 hours to write a 250 word micro story or a short story over a
Mhm.
few days. And I take part in that as often as I can. Um, and so yeah, my voice tends to be mine. It sounds like me, and I've heard
Exactly.
that from
Exactly. You want
multiple
to be
writers.
you. Exactly.
And it's something that I've read that you can't create your voice. It just comes from writing. And as a writer continues to write more, that voice strengthens and it becomes more identifiable as Lucien Telford or
Another
Ardain.
good question.
Mm.
Will we see Dallas Ward in the sequel?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Someone like him.
I,
How's that?
I,
Let's put it this way. Someone like him.
somebody like him. Well, we're gonna see. I do have recurring characters.
Okay.
I have new characters. I have a new protagonist.
Okay.
And I want to answer that question so badly,
Okay, I got you.
but
Let's
I'm not
let's
going
leave it
to.
this way.
But I do have recurring characters. It is a continuation of this story.
Mhm.
And it takes place about 3 months after the ending of this one.
Okay. So when do we expect to lay our hands on the sequel?
I I'm looking for a 2023 release. Initially, I was looking at a summer release, but the pace of finishing this first draft has not progressed as I wanted.
Okay.
I did take on a training role at work, so I'm a training captain now, which involved a bit more work
Okay.
and a little less time available
All
for
right.
writing. But yeah, I anticipate a 2023 release. Let's say probably after summer, just considering the constraints of publication.
Mhm.
I'm gonna self-publish through, well, hybrid publish through Friesen
Mhm.
Press
Right.
again, and part of that is due to the speed at which
You want
you
to do
can
it.
publish. Yeah.
All right. So that means we can hold our breath.
Hold your
Maybe next
breath.
autumn, by September,
I
November.
would say September, November is a
November.
very good target.
Okay. So where do you tell the audience to find you? I know you on Twitter. You have your own website.
I do. Yep. Okay. Well, my name is Lucien Telford, and that's Lucien as in November. Uh, Telford, Telford as in Delta. You can find me at Lucien Telford on Twitter,
Mhm.
at Lucien Telford on Instagram.
Sure.
Um, and my website is lucientelfordbooks.com.
Mhm.
I'm all over the internet. There's you can buy the book anywhere. Barnes and Noble
Mhm.
in the US, Chapters Indigo in Canada,
Mhm.
Amazon, and all the indie local bookstores as well.
Mhm.
And I need to update my media page because I do have well, I will have this interview to promote, and then I've got another one I've done in the last month. I need to put up on the website as well. So I do have a blog. If you've ever heard of Library Thing, I'm a member of that as well.
Okay.
There's all kind of
Okay.
I'm all over the internet.
All the way to the internet.
Google is your
My
friend.
last question, Lucien. If someone, let's say, would like to be a multi-dimensional, impeccable writer as you are, because I know all the trick, you know, yeah, including scientific, genetic, you know, findings about that. Uh, I know it's a difficult thing, but what lesson, what advice would you give such a person?
Commitment to the end product to keep your eyes on the prize, and remember um, that all of the research that you put into an aspect of your book or
Mhm,
project that you know nothing about,
mhm,
all of the work and research that you do will reflect in the characters and believability of your finished product. And so, why put anything except everything you have
mhm,
into the research?
mhm.
in order to come up with the product that you want to be excellent.
Mhm.
Research, 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 revise, 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 and
Mhm.
find a great editor.
Okay. And at some point you have to call it, right?
That's yeah, there is such a thing as too much deep dark internet dives, but sometimes those 6 a.m.
Right,
bleary-eyed
right.
eye drops, sometimes those moments are the aha moments when you've
All
sat there
right,
all
right.
night and you
I got
finally
you.
got there. But
Yeah.
don't do it all the time. Not good
Yeah.
for your health.
Especially me also. I'm getting old, so I can't do it
Yeah,
all the time.
exactly,
Okay. So
exactly.
this on that note, I would say we could talk forever,
I
but
think we could.
it has been such a pleasure to have you. And Lucien Telford, an impeccable author in the conversation.
Merci beaucoup, Ardain. It's been a great pleasure.
Moi aussi, monsieur.